So how does love play a role in non-dual awakening? I think this comes up regularly. Like, there is two different things that seem to happen when there's awakening. There is the emptiness awakening, where it's this impersonality, this no place, this waking up and realizing, but it's not realizing as a thought or realizing as an idea, it's the energetic shift or seeing that this is nothing, this is empty. Or it's this knowing that this is empty now, that there is nothing here, there is nobody here. And it's this, you'd say this is the emptiness. It's like, it's the seeing that nothing has ever happened, that there is just what's happening, and that it's totally empty and void of anything, and yet there is everything. So that everythingness is the emptiness. So there can be that awakening. And then there's also this other awakening of love. And the love side is a sense of connection and intimacy with everything, a sense of no space from everything. That who you are and everything is one and the same thing. And the love is an intimacy. An intimacy with everything. And they're kind of together. They go together. Sometimes it's not seen, so the emptiness part is seen, but not the love part, because it's like when they're totally together, when it's like this total merging with the nothing and the everything, it's like absolute death. There's like nothing happening, and there is no world, no place. It's a oneness experience. So it like in some ways you could say, so now if there's this like sense of emptiness or this sense of nothing, if you put the attention deep into that, the one that puts their attention into it begins to disappear, not in all cases, but it can begin to disappear. And then there is this love. It's like absolute love. Like nothing removed from that. And it really can't be an intellectual thing, love. It really can't be a personal thing. So when we're younger, we believe that love is a personal thing, that there is a me here that loves something. But actually, when you're in that, it's always about need. So love to somebody that loves something is about them being fulfilled in some level. So it's some need or want. Not that that's a wrong thing. It's just that it's not true love. It's a condition-based love that comes and goes and changes. And although it's got a seed of the true love in it, it's not. It's like a different experience or sensation. It's filled with other feelings of like getting what you want, of feeling satisfied, of maybe feeling superior or feeling competitive. There's other feelings in that. And true love is unconditioned. It's not something that can love something for a condition. It's really not based in time. It can only be a disappearance of self. So it's like as there's a dissolving into what you are, then there's just this natural, vibrant love that arises that is all things. When love is based on time, it comes and goes. When this is recognized, when there's this energetic shift, like love doesn't come and go. It maybe decreases and increases in intensity just because when you're more in the human world, there needs to be more focus on the person and the other, and so therefore that's more in the lens. But when you're sitting by yourself or meditating or reading or doing something very simple, then that love can completely take over because there doesn't need to be a character that's navigating the world. So even though it's always there, it seems to grow, or for me it seems to grow with intensity dependent on action, dependent on what's happening. But it's always there, it's always accessible, it's always underneath everything. And it comes with the emptiness, the non-attachment to anything, the absolute embracing of everything. And this sounds so wooey-tooey, like I'm some new age hipster, which I am. But it's also like really, really practical because it's actually the experience when you step outside of thinking. But that's so impossible because everything for the mind that's listening, because everything it knows is in subject-object, in a mental reality. So it's what were you before your mental reality? What are you when your mental reality is disappearing? What's fascinating about that is there's no logical thinking in the disappearance of thinking. So therefore you can't remember it. It's a no place, a no thing. Like we remember events, we remember things, we remember thoughts about events. We can't remember a nothing. So that's like really fascinating as well. So it's then always like, who has the awakening or who knows this? Like I seemingly know this because there was a before and an after. There was a before when I was in a conditioned reality, and then there's seemingly an after. But that is a memory, so I'm even willing to drop that and say, I don't know. It's really this not knowingness. Like what is it that we can possibly know here? What is it that's free without knowing something? What is the birthright? The birthright wasn't to think. Not everybody has the ability to think in a complex manner. And some people will never be able to think. Some people lose their memory, have brain image. Your birthright wasn't to think. So what was the birthright? And you could say it in many ways, that the birthright is to know this beyond anything else. To know this. And it's not even something that knows this. You could say to be this. Like one thing that never changes in experience is there's always this, no matter what. this alive, awake presence. So that's one thing that there always is this. Like, have you ever experienced a time when there wasn't this? This moment. What's happening? So there's many times when you've experienced this without the person, without thoughts, but you've never been able to experience this without this. And what I mean by this is what's happening. And what's happening is really mysterious, but we can say it's got qualities to it. Like, there is a perception of this happening, but not a perception that's separate from this. There is this happening that's perceiving itself. And that perception doesn't come from inside the body. Like, in your experience now, it doesn't come from inside of the body. That's an added thought. It comes from inside the body. In the moment of it, it's experiencing, and there is everything, including bits of the body. Like, I can see my knees, I can see my hands, I can see a bit of fringe, a bit of hair. But even that's interpretation. Like, in the intimacy prior to thinking, there is this with no second. There is this instant and nothing more. It's totally without any thought, without any conceptualization. What happens with excessive conceptualization of this and me and you is there's actually a feeling in the body that feels limited of a me that's experiencing the world, and that me is always self-referencing itself. So it gives like an energetic expression of there being somebody there, and in the awakening often that shifts, and then there's like lots of kundalini stuff that happens. But that isn't true. There isn't an energetic you inside the body. There is everything seemingly looking through this body, you could say intellectually after the event, but in the moment it's not looking from anywhere. There is simply everything happening with no second. There's nobody that knows it. There's nothing that can think about it. Thinking appears and disappears in it. The you that knows it and doesn't know disappears in it. Appears and disappears in it. But this knowing is all places and no places. This big knowing, this knowing without thought, this knowing that's not knowing. It's simply here awake and doesn't know that it's awake. Doesn't know that there is a sleep. Doesn't know that there is a human body or any of that. It's just awake. And that's such love. That's the basis of experiencing. It's the basis of being. And it's totally empty. Like right now, the experiencer is empty. The idea that there is a you there experiencing is simply an idea, which has created lots of unnecessary thinking, which tends to go into suffering because the mind tends to think of problems and how to fix problems, and you become a problem. And then there's all types of psychology that begins to play out. But there's not actually a you there experiencing. This is such deep teaching and can be very dangerous in the wrong hands and with the wrong interpretation. So please read the disclaimer on my website, and please be careful listening to these videos because it's such a deep teaching. I'm basically saying to you that there is nobody that's experiencing now. And if you've been an experiencer for 50 years of your life, this could really be, an existential crisis. And if you're sort of 20 years old and you haven't really got much life experience, this could kind of like get you into some bizarre thinking. But it's actually it's absolute freedom when it's recognized by nobody. But often what happens is the person creates all types of interpretations of it and problems out of it. So who is it that's looking now? Who's looking? Who's hearing? Who's thinking? Who's feeling? There is this knee-jerk reaction that's like, me, I am doing all these things. But who is that me? Who is that me that's claiming to be something? And it's that love, it's that no place that's the orchestrator of everything. Orchestrates everything. But not as a personified person, like that's the nature of the mind, is to think, okay, there is something inside of us, this entity inside of us called the big consciousness or the big not knowing, and that's like moving us. And it's happening through this spontaneity, like everything is arising from that no place. It's not even arising because it's not like a wave on an ocean that's like whoop. It's happening instantaneously. And to me, that's like creativity. That's something that's fascinated me my whole life, is the movement from that place. In a way, life is always moving from that place, even when you're doing it through an identified ego that's in not so suffering. But to me, what's been the fascination is like stripping it back more and more and more until you're kind of resting in that place in which creativity arises from through that character. It's this kind of, you feel this love of everything that's appearing, and there's like an emptiness to everything, like it's an impersonality to everything. So the speaking happens, but it's not Lisa speaking. The creativity happens if you're an artist, but it's not the person doing it. It's coming from this place of love. It's coming from this place of emptiness through the Lisa character. And it creates the Lisa character with particular emotions and feelings in order to move her in particular ways. But it's like getting to that sweet spot of it coming, like, so your sense of being you is coming, it's like right on the edge of that void, of that emptiness. So it's like it's coming into creation from that void. So the feeling is that everything arises from love, even if the character is in anger. Even for me, sometimes when I have old seeking patterns coming, it still feels like it's coming from that love. So where is that place in you? Like, so you sitting there listening, where is that place of emptiness, of love? And it's in the heart of being. It's your essence. It's what's there all the time. And what happens when you're in the person and in the identified with the person is that there's so much focus on the identification and what you have and don't have, what your feelings are, what you need, what you want. There's so much focus on that it's covered. So it's like a coming back to something that's inherent in everything. So you could say like going into the heart of being. And some people call it like a going back, but it's really not back or forward because it's everywhere in all things. And it's really radical. It's finding that place in everything that's happening. in the sadness of the character, in the despair of the character, in the goodness of the character. These things do seem to settle down the highs and lows of the character as it's really realized. But it's also equally, if something really shitty happens, it's like sitting in that place of love even when something shitty happens and when you have to lay in bed and curl up and cry. What most people are doing a lot in their life is they're looking to find salvation in a future event or in avoiding a past event. So they're looking for salvation and freedom in whatever, earning enough money, having kids, lessening pain, food, alcohol, sex, attention, fame. So it's like a constant foggy dream of an illusory you that has to get to these things in order to be free. And the fog is like so interesting that it's constantly morphing. So even if you've done that game of trying to find it in one thing, like your partner or something, 1,000 times before, it morphs, and so it kind of feels like you've never done it before, and it's the most important thing there is in the universe. And that game keeps the attention tightly fixed on the person and the dream of the person. It's like, if you imagine like playing a game, like a computer game, and it's like really intense. It's like the intensity of that seeking game keeps the screen very filled with the story of you and what you've accomplished, what you're going to accomplish, who people see you as, how people see you, if you're loved or not loved. This whole dynamic plays out. And it's not true. What you actually seek, the salvation, is your own heart of being. It's like the most frustratingly beautiful game that was ever created. Like the game is, you believe the game is out there in the world of this character you getting something, but the game is in the heart of the game. It's in yourself. So the answer, winning the game is coming back to yourself. So it's maybe like if you imagine a virtual reality game and you put your headset on and you're playing a character and the character keeps thinking it has to do all these things to get what it wants, and it's like running around this world trying to get things, but the gemstone that you're looking for is your heart. So it's like as soon as there's a giving up and a going back to, okay, I've done everything in this virtual reality, and then there's a giving back up and going back to what you've always been. And that's the completion of the game. Whoever makes that game, like, it could be a game about looking for the lost stone, the lost gem, the lost light. Maybe it could be like a world of darkness and you're looking for the lost light. And then the light is in the heart. Yeah, that's a bit like, who's going to want to play that? Yeah. You're searching for the light, and then you're like, ooh, there is a light coming out of my heart. I can imagine that actually being a little bit tripe. But that's the game of this life. Everything you ever look for and seeking is yourself. It's just not out there. Yes, there is pleasure and pain, and yes, this body is always going to move towards pleasure and away from pain. It's the way it's directed. But it's this giving up of this identity that believes in that. Rather than it just being a happening, it's an identity that believes in that and is playing the game and constantly registering the story of you and going through all these ups and downs in Storyland and hokey pokies. He doesn't love me, she loves me too much. I want this person, I don't want that person, and that person wants that person, and that person wants that person, and there's all these dramas going on, and it's just not true. It's not in that.